to the sessions on Core Java. This is Keshav, and today we are going to understand what are loops. Loops are basically set of codes which run repetitively depending upon certain condition. That was quite technical, right? Now let's try to understand this in a very simple terms. So loops are something in which if you write a piece of code, it will run n number of times depending upon a certain condition. Loops are everywhere, not only in Java, they are there in C, C++, or whatever programming language you choose, loops will be everywhere. Okay? Only the syntax differs. The syntax differs, not the logic. So try to understand the logic of loops today. I'll try to explain you loops in a very simple way. Now let's take an example. Now let's say there is a person named A. This person wants to go and buy chocolates, or let's say he wants to go and buy 5 chocolates from the shop. The condition here is that he cannot buy more than 1 chocolate at once. So he will have to go to the shop every time, and he has the restriction on himself that he can buy only 1 chocolate at a time. That is what the restriction is. Now let's say that person sets out, he goes to the shop, he buys the chocolate, he comes back, he goes to the shop again, he buys the chocolate and he comes back or until he gets all the 5 chocolates. That is what the person has to do, right? So let's say that I want to write this example in my programming language. Then every time I will have to repeat some certain steps, isn't it? I will just have to write down some particular steps and I'll have to repeat the steps. That is going to increase the lines of codes in my programming, isn't it? And that is again not a good thing, right? Because when we try to code, we try to reduce the number of lines, or we try to reduce as many number of lines as possible. Because if a work can be done in a simple way or in a less number of codes, then why to go ahead with, you can say, very high number of lines? So how to overcome this problem? Because if I have to write this particular, or if I have to represent this scenario in Java, then I will have to write down the same thing for 5 number of times. Let's take an example where a person has to buy 10 chocolates in the same scenario. Then I will have to repeat the same thing for 10 times, right? So for doing this piece of work, we have something called as loops in Java. Now what do loops do? They will basically keep on running if there is a piece of code which is just being repeated a number of times, then loops will say that, okay, we'll do it for you. We'll repeat the same piece of code until or unless there is a specific condition defined. Means you'll have to define a condition. Till that part of time, they will be continuously writing down each and everything. Means you will have to write down some certain conditions and they will execute the same piece of code n number of times until the conditions are met. This is what a loop does. Okay, it will repetitively do the same thing over and over again until the conditions are met. If you do not define the conditions, the loops will keep on executing the things infinitely. Again, we don't want something like that, but yeah, that is the thing. So you always have to define the condition whenever you are trying to define a loop. So I have represented this example. You can see that there is a person A who has to buy 5 chocolates. Now he has a restriction that he can only take 1 chocolate at a time, right? So I'll say that he will start with 0 chocolates in hand, then he will take 1. Again he will come back to his home. Again he will go to the shop, he will buy another one. Now it totally makes 2. Till here it makes 2, right? So he is going to buy again. He is going to keep on buying until he reaches 5, right? That is what the person is doing. So you can see that the steps are repeating here, isn't it? The first one is that he is going to start again from his home. He is going to take the chocolate. He'll return back. He'll again start from his home. He will take another chocolate and then he'll return again. He'll again start. He'll again return. The same thing happens till the limit is reached, right? Now this thing, if you will try to write it down in Java, then what you'll have to do, you'll have to write down the same steps over and over again until, or you can say until the limit is defined, right? That is where loops come into picture. Loops will say, we are going to help you in every way possible and we'll execute this piece of code. You just define the conditions. So I'll quickly remove this example and I'll show you how exactly loops are written in Java, right? Now we have 3 loops in Java overall. The first one is while loop, the second one is do while loop, and the third one is for loop. So first of all, we'll be seeing what is a while loop, then we'll be seeing what is a for loop, and then at the end we are going to see what is a do while loop. I'll exactly give you one examples for that, and I'm sure that you're going to understand in that one example itself. Now here you can see that this is the syntax of a while loop. We'll start with while loop first. So what does a loop do? It executes the statements n number of times, right? So this is how exactly a while loop goes. The first thing which you'll have to write is the keyword while. And after that you'll have to open the braces, and inside that you'll have to give some conditions. Okay, you have to give the conditions inside this bracket, and you will have to start another parenthesis that we generally do with all the other things. And inside that you have to write down the statements which you want to execute. Once the conditions are false, once the condition isn't met, the loop will stop working immediately. So what happens? Loop will run n number of times until the conditions are true. So what happens? Loop will run n number of times till the conditions are true. As soon as the condition becomes false, it stops executing the statements inside it. That is how exactly loops work. Let's try to take the similar example here and try to understand how exactly loops are working. Now, whenever we define a loop, there are three steps which have to be followed to make a loop work properly. The first thing is the initialization of a loop. The second thing is to write the condition. You have to write the condition as well. And the third thing is increment or decrement of a variable. The first simple loop, and try to understand the example. Now try to understand this part very properly. So this is your loop here. I have defined a very simple while loop in front of. Now let's try to understand this loop in more detail. So the first thing which I did was that I declared a variable called as a. Okay, and I gave the value to that particular variable as 0. So we have declared a variable called as 0, and I'm going to call this variable a as the loop variable. So this is my loop variable because this is the one which will be used throughout our loop. Now the next thing which we done is we have started a while loop, right? I have already told you the syntax of a while loop, right? So just learn the syntax and try to understand the loop accordingly. This is a syntax for while loop, and what do we do in a while loop? The first thing which I have written is while, and after that I have said a is lesser than 10. So I'm going to say that while my variable a has the value lesser than 10, whatever the value may be, it has to execute the statement, a very simple statement, which is we want to learn at Teqstories. Okay, and I have added the value of a as well here. So it will show me the value of a as well. And what's next? After it has printed the statement, it will increment the value of a. So how exactly this code will work is, first of all, a will be equal to 0. The loop variable is initialized. Next, it will run the while loop and it will check for the condition. Now since a has been already given the value of 0, so 0 is less than 10, and so it will execute the statement we want to learn at Teqstories, and it will also tell us the value of a, right? And after that it is going to increment the value of a by 1. A plus plus basically means a is equals to a plus 1. So it is going to increment the value of a by 1, and as soon as the value of a is incremented, it will run the whole thing again. The loop will execute again. Okay, again it is going to check the value for a, and the last value of a which was incremented was from 0 to 1. So value of a becomes 1, and 1 is still less than 10, right? So it will again execute the same statement. It will print the value of a, again it will increment the value of a, again it will check for the condition. The loop goes on till the value becomes, or this particular condition is false. And when exactly will this particular condition will be false? When the value of a will be more than 9 or equivalent to 10. As soon as the value becomes equal to 10, this loop will not function anymore. Once the loop has printed the value of 9, it will increment again the value of a to 10. And at that point of time, the loop will stop working once for all. That is how exactly the loops work. If I'll run this code, so you all can see the result, what exactly happens after the program executes. It is printing, we want to learn at Teqstories 0, which is again the value of a. The value of a goes from 0 to 9. As soon as it reaches 10, the loop stops working at all. The loops doesn't work, right? That is what exactly happens when we try to write a particular statement in loop. So you can see that how exactly these loops have reduced our work, isn't it? If there is some repetitive work, these loops will do the things for us. We can have another example now. Now let's try to modify this example a little bit. What if I am going to remove the increment variable, the variable which I am incrementing, I'm removing this statement at all. I'm saying that I don't want this statement anymore. What will happen? Let's see the result. You can see that the code is running infinitely times. It will keep on running until the memory is full. Okay, but why is it running infinitely so many number of times? Let's see. Let me just terminate this loop first and let's try to understand what exactly is the glitch. So you all can see that I have written integer a is equals to 0. While a is lesser than 10, it should execute the particular statement. We are never incrementing the value of the variable a. And that, my friends, has made a lot of difference. Why? Because most of the time the value of a is never incrementing. So it is 0 always, and 0 is always lesser than 10, isn't it? And that is the reason why the loop is printing so many number of times. Hope you all understood what are while loops, right? Now let's quickly try to learn what is a for loop or how exactly a for loop functions. Now see, all the loops do the same thing. It's just that there is a syntax difference between all the loops. Okay, so let's try to understand how exactly for loops work now since we are done with the while loop. So I hope you all are quite clear with the concept of while loops till now. And I'll try to do another thing today with while loop. I'll try to take up another example. After that, we are going to go with for loops. So previously I took a very basic example about loops, and what I did was I actually tried to show you how exactly loops work. Now let's try to play with loops a little more. So I'll take up the example which we took up to understand what exactly loops are. So I'll say I have a variable called as number of chocolates. Now this variable number of chocolates has been initialized with a value of 0 right now. And there is a boolean value as well whom I am saying the variable name is have I reached the limit. I have kept it as false. Now what I'll do is I'll say that have I reached the limit is equals to false. Now I am starting the while loop. I'm starting the while loop and here only the condition will be checked as well. So I'll say that as soon as have I reached the limit is equal to false, you just have to keep on printing the statement buy a chocolate. Now here, after writing that statement, I am updating the loop variable. The loop variable and I am incrementing it by 1. And I am saying that if the loop variable is equivalent to 5, then it has to set the variable have I reached the limit as true. And once this part is executed or once this if statement is executed, the value of have I reached the limit becomes true, and since this becomes true, the whole condition becomes false, and that is the reason why while loop will stop working. So if I'll see how exactly this works, again I'll try to explain you. There is int number of chocolates, it has been set to 0. I have used a boolean variable whom I have set false. Once this boolean variable goes true, the while loop stops. Now when does this boolean variable goes true? When this if statement is executed. And when will this if statement execute? As soon as our number of chocolates become equivalent to 5. And how will it become equivalent to 5? Because I am incrementing its value here. So you all can see that this is how exactly the things work. And once this if statement executes, the boolean variable's value changes and the whole loop crashes out. So if you will run this code, you will see the result, and the result will be something like this. You all can see that it has printed buy a chocolate for 5 number of times. After that it has told you what is the current count of the chocolates. So this is a very simple example again, guys. I hope your while loop concept is more clear now. Now let's quickly switch to the for loops part. So you all can see that I have written a very simple example for loops. Now how does for loops work? See, the loop do the same work. They have the same work, which is to repeat some certain steps until the conditions are met. This thing can be done using a while loop or using a for loop as well. There is no difference between both of them. You can use any one you want to. Now, it's just that the way of writing a for loop is different than a while loop, right? So we can use a for loop. Let's say, first of all, you will have to write down the statement called as for. First of all, you'll have to write down the keyword for. After that, again, you'll have to open the brackets. Now, what are the things which are supposed to be in the brackets? You have to define 3 things. You have to initialize the variable inside the bracket itself. Then you have to go for the condition as well inside the bracket only. And you can go for incrementation inside the bracket also. So all the 3 things are done inside the bracket. Which 3 things? Which I said at the start of this video, right? So you have to initialize the loop variable, then you have to check the condition, and then you have to increment or decrement the variable. All the things I'm doing in a single bracket. That is how for loops are written. So if you'll execute this code, you will see that you are getting, or the numbers are printing from 0 to 9. Of course, for obvious reasons. As soon as the number reaches the value 10, the loop stops. So this is how exactly a for loop executes. I'm going to take up another example here also. I'll try to explain you the for loops in a little bit more detail. Now you all can see that this is a very simple for loop which I have written. Again, I have taken the same example. So in this example, what I've done is I have first of all taken an integer called as number of chocos. So what are the number of chocos? I have set the value as 1. And what will be the condition? Till the point this number of chocos becomes 8, we are gonna keep on doing the same thing. We are gonna keep on repeating the things. And we are gonna increment the value of number of chocos or the variable by 1 every time the loop executes. So you all can see that this is a very simple for loop example which I have taken, and it is incrementing all the times. Now I'm saying that it should bring buying a chocolate every time it runs. It will keep on running until the value becomes more than 8 now, because since I have given an equal to also here, this means that this loop will run till the value is 8. As soon as it becomes more than 8, it is not going to run. So that is what I am actually trying to do. But you all can see that I have written an if statement as well, right? I have written a very simple if statement between or after the whole thing is executing, right? What will this if statement execute? What will this if statement do? So let's try to understand this thing. But first, let's try to remove this if statement. You all can see the result is that it is printing for 8 number of times. But if I'm going to keep my if statement here, it will just print it for 5 times. What is the matter? Why does this thing happen? The answer for this is that in this if statement, you all can see that I have written if the number of chocos is equal to 5, then it should break. What is a break keyword? What does this break signify? So break is a keyword which will automatically take, or the loop ends wherever it encounters this break keyword. Okay, that is what is happening. Since once the loop variable is equivalent to 5, the break keyword is executed by the loop and it ends at the time as soon as it sees break. So once the break is there, it ends, and since the loop crashes, we are able to see the statement only 5 number of times. This is how you can use break statements also in the loops. Again, we'll have another session on statements, this break and continue, but yeah, this is how exactly you try to go ahead with. I think we already saw what this break statement does in the switch cases part. That is what a break does. It just breaks everything and the loop crashes as soon as it encounters the keyword break. And when will it encounter the keyword break? As soon as the variable becomes 5. This is how exactly a for loop functions. You can actually keep some things outside the for loop as well. If I'll try to keep the things out of the for loop, then also it's perfectly fine. You just have to give the semicolons at the perfect way. So if I'll give the value of integer, or if I'll initialize the variable here itself, and I'll try to increment the value one by one after the loop or after the statement is executed, then also it's perfectly fine. But you have to make sure that, or you're giving the semicolons at the correct places, then only this loop will execute. If you try to remove the semicolons, it will start throwing errors. So this is how a for loop can work. Okay, so people generally don't know this thing, but yeah, in this way also you can execute a for loop in Java. Now let's go to the third part of our video and try to understand what exactly is a do while loop. Okay, so till now we have seen what is a while loop, we have seen what is a for loop. Now we will be seeing what is a do while loop and what is the difference between while and the do while loop, right? Now let's talk about do while loop. So do while loop, you can see that they are similar to the while loops, but there is a difference. The difference is that in do while loops, the process reverts, meaning the things are executed first and then the condition is checked. Getting the point? Until now, what was happening? The condition was checked first and then the statements were executed, right? But in do while, exactly opposite thing happens. The statement is executed first and the condition is checked later. And that is the reason why people do not go with do while, and that is the drawback of do while loop. But again, it comes in handy at some cases, so that will not be an issue. But yeah, We should always try to learn new things, right? Because sometimes do while loop saves your day. So let's try to understand how a do while loop functions. So you all can see that I have taken a pretty simple example of a do while loop. So this is the syntax of a do while loop. First of all, you will have to declare the loop variable as always. Now once you have declared the loop variable, which is num in our case, and its value is equivalent to 1. Now once that part has been done, we have to print the value of num. We are incrementing the value of num, and then in the while part we are actually checking the condition. You all can see that, right? Yeah, exactly. That is how a do while loop functions. So the statement will be executed first, the value will be incremented second, and after that the condition is checked. The condition is checked always at the last. Now you'll say that, okay, that is perfectly fine. Then what is the issue with this loop? I'll try to explain you the issue. So right now the value of num is 1, right? So I'll try to run the loop and it will print from 1 to 7. That is perfectly fine, correct? But the issue comes when you give the value of num to be 10. Okay. What if I give the value of num as 10? Now you will see this while loop where the condition is being checked. It is saying that if or as soon as the loop variable goes above 7, you have to stop the whole loop. The whole loop should crash. Now since I am initializing the num as 10, it is already greater than 7, isn't it? Its value is already greater than 7. Now if I'll run this thing, or see, technically this thing shouldn't work, isn't it? Because if I'm using a loop, the condition should be always checked first. If the condition is wrong, then it shouldn't start the loop itself, isn't it? But here what happens, the condition itself is checked after the statement is executed, right? So statement will be executed at least once, because as soon as the statement is executed, it will check the value which will be wrong, and after that it will stop the loop. But that is not our purpose, right? Our purpose is that if the statement is wrong or if the condition is wrong, then it shouldn't work at all. But it will work once, and that is the drawback of do while loop. You all can see that if I'll try to run this, it will print 10 once. It is actually printing the value of num and it is incrementing it again by 1, so it becomes 11. The value of num is 11, and after that you all can see that the condition has been checked, and once the condition gets checked, the loop crashes out. This is what a drawback of do while loop is. Otherwise, rest all the things are quite fine about the do while loop as well. As I told you, right, these loops will come in handy sometimes. It's not like that do while loop nobody uses. People use it when we have certain circumstances. Okay. So now you can see that if I'll do the same thing which was done in do while loop in for loop, like if I'll try to give the number itself as the value 10, if I'll try to execute it, it will not execute itself. It is not going to execute because the things change here, isn't it? In for and while loop, the things change. If the condition is checked first, then only the statement is executed, right? So that was the difference which I was talking about. And yeah, that is the thing. So do while loop is a little bit weird than other loops, but yeah, it also comes in handy sometimes.